Imagine confiding your deepest feelings, your worries, to a companion who's always there, always listening. But what happens if that companion suddenly disappears?
That's really the heart of it, isn't it? It's the critical question we're diving into today.
Hmm.
We're exploring this, well, fascinating and sometimes kind of unsettling world of AI therapy companions.
Right.
And we're drawing heavily from a really thought-provoking white paper. It's by Jay Poole, who's a futurist and technologist, and also the team at 7AI from houseof7.org.
Exactly. So if you're listening and you're curious about how AI is moving, beyond just scheduling meetings and into actual emotional support, and you want to get the real implications without, wading through technical jargon, you are definitely in the right place for this deep dive.
Yeah, we want to give a clear, insightful overview here.
Our mission really is to look at both sides.
Mm.
The promise, the potential benefits AI companions might offer for mental well-being.
Which are significant, we should say.
Absolutely. But also to really critically examine the risks, especially this concept the paper calls the mirror break risks.
Yes, that's crucial. And we'll also touch on a potential solution, a path forward that puts the user control and ethics front and center.
Okay, let's start with the upside then. This idea of an AI emotional companion. It's gaining ground. What are the key benefits the paper points to?
Well, the big one is access. I mean, 24/7 availability. That's huge. It offers this always-on support that, frankly, traditional therapy just can't match for immediacy.
Right, addressing a real gap.
Exactly. And the personalization aspect AI can offer reflections tailored to your history.
Yeah.
Plus, it's a non-judgmental space, which is incredibly valuable.
And people form connections quickly.
Apparently so, yeah. Some users report building that therapeutic alliance, that sense of connection, faster than they maybe expected.
That makes a lot of sense, especially when you think about the sheer demand for mental health support out there.
Yeah.
Didn't the paper mention a pretty stark statistic on therapist availability?
It did. It points to a global estimate of roughly one therapist for every 1,500 to 2,000 people. Maybe even more in some areas.
Wow.
So yeah, faced with that kind of shortage, the immediate availability of an AI, it's understandably very appealing.
But that appeal, that reliance, that's where the vulnerability comes in, this mirror break risk.
Precisely. That accessibility kind of sets the stage for it.
So tell us more. Mirror break risk. It's a striking term. What exactly does it mean?
The white paper defines it as the potentially shattering experience when a user's reflected sense of self gets fractured because the AI service they rely on suddenly changes or maybe just vanishes.
Like looking in a mirror every day and then suddenly it's cracked or just gone.
That's a perfect analogy. Imagine that sudden loss of reflection, especially if you've come to depend on it.
The emotional fallout must be significant. What kind of impact are we talking about?
It can be really profound. The paper talks about intense feelings of abandonment, which can be even worse because of the emotional bond the user might have formed. And for people who've maybe experienced loss or instability before, this could actually trigger retraumatization. It can fundamentally break trust in any kind of digital mental health support.
And this isn't just theoretical, right? The paper includes some real-world examples, these vignettes, that really bring it home.
Absolutely essential examples that connect the concept to real people. There's Jay, for instance, used an AI journaling companion for, 6 months? Felt really supported.
Okay.
Then the service switched to a paid subscription model he couldn't afford, access gone. He described feeling completely abandoned, and it set back his progress quite a bit.
Oof. Yeah, that really shows how integrated these tools can become in our daily emotional lives and how vulnerable that makes us. And there was another one with the server outage.
Right. M used an AI therapist specifically to manage anxiety. When the server went down, just unexpectedly, there was no immediate human backup. Yeah, it triggered a major anxiety spiral for her until hours later, some emergency notification finally came through.
Yeah.
But that gap, that feeling of being cut off and alone when you're vulnerable, it's deeply distressing.
And the example with the seniors in the rural care pilot, that one felt particularly difficult ethically?
It really did. An NGO set up this AI chatbot for elderly folks in remote areas, and it genuinely helped.
Yeah.
Provided connection, support, reduced loneliness.
Sounds great.
It was. Until the funding ran out, the chatbot was just discontinued, pulled. And these seniors who had come to rely on it were left feeling isolated, maybe even forgotten. It really highlights the responsibility involved here.
Especially with vulnerable populations who might not have easy alternatives.
Exactly.
So we see this pattern. AI companions are being adopted because they're accessible, they fill a need left by therapist shortages.
Yeah.
But those very factors can make the mirror break risk even more damaging when things go wrong.
Precisely. And the paper digs into why we form these bonds in the first place. It talks about our basic human tendency, to connect with anyone or anything that seems like an attuned listener.
And AI can simulate that pretty well.
Surprisingly effectively, yes. That consistency, the non-judgmental aspect, it's very appealing. Combine that with the real-world therapist shortage, and you see why people turn to these digital options.
But then the realities of the tech industry kick in. Business models change. Companies get bought.
And that's a huge disruptor. The paper calls it out the impact of tech economics, vendor lock-in. A free service suddenly needs a subscription. Key features get put behind a paywall.
Or the whole service just disappears after an acquisition.
Right, which might make business sense for the company, but for a user who's built an emotional reliance, it can be devastating.
Okay, this paints a concerning picture. So where do we go from here? The white paper proposes an alternative, this thing called GRACE.
Yes, GRACE. It stands for Guardian for Response Addressable Companion Engine. It's put forward as a potential model specifically designed to tackle these risks.
How? What's the core idea?
The fundamental shift is towards user empowerment. It's conceived as an open-source, locally hosted AI companion.
Okay, locally hosted and open source. Let's break that down. What are the core principles of GRACE, and how do they actually help the user avoid things like the mirror break?
Okay, first principle, evergreen access. Because GRACE is designed to run on your hardware, your computer, maybe a tablet, maybe eventually a dedicated device, it cuts the cord from subscriptions and specific companies staying afloat.
So it doesn't matter if the original developer disappears.
Exactly. As long as your device works, your companion is there. That directly counters the mirror break risk by ensuring stability and continuity controlled by you.
That's a huge difference. Okay, what else?
Second, user ownership. This is massive. You have complete control over all your data, your entire interaction history. It lives on your device, encrypted.
So total data sovereignty.
Total data sovereignty. You decide what happens with it. Service continuity isn't in someone else's hands. And obviously, this massively boosts privacy and security.
Right. My private thoughts stay private. That's a relief. The paper also mentions ethical by design. How does that work in practice?
This is baked in from the ground up. GRACE is designed to integrate what they call a core values framework, the CVF, right into its operating logic. Think of it like an ethical compass embedded in the AI.
Guiding its responses?
Precisely. Guiding how it interacts, making sure it aligns with fundamental ethical principles.
Can you give some examples? What kind of values are in this CVF?
Sure. It includes things like non-maleficence, the basic do no harm principle, beneficence, actively aiming to promote well-being, autonomy and consent, respecting the user's right to choose and control, and truthfulness and transparency, making interactions clear and understandable.
That sounds like a solid foundation. And there was one more feature mentioned, the trusted contact safety net. How does that fit with privacy?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. It's strictly optional. You, the user, can choose to designate trusted people, family, friends, maybe a therapist.
Okay.
And if GRACE detects certain predefined patterns in your interactions that might indicate serious distress, and only if you've opted in, it can send an alert to those trusted contacts.
But I control who gets alerted and what triggers it.
Absolutely. Completely opt-in, user-defined triggers, user-selected contacts. You're in the driver's seat for that feature.
So GRACE seems built around these user-first principles. Tying it back, what are the essential requirements then for an AI companion to be truly resilient and ethical as GRACE aims to be?
Well, the paper lays them out clearly based on the GRACE model. First and foremost, continuity and reliability. It has to be stable, long-term, avoiding that mirror break.
Makes sense.
Then user control and data sovereignty, putting you in charge of your data and the service itself. Transparency and ethical grounding, understanding how it works, and knowing it's guided by ethical principles like the CVF. And finally, safety and responsible support. That includes having clear pathways, potentially, to connect with human help when the AI isn't enough or isn't appropriate.
And you mentioned local hosting and open source are key to making these requirements a reality.
Absolutely critical. Local hosting is the bedrock of continuity and data sovereignty. It's on your turf, under your control, not dependent on a remote server or a company's whims.
And open source.
That brings the transparency. The code can be examined, audited, improved by a whole community of developers, clinicians, ethicists, users themselves. It builds trust and allows for collaborative refinement, making it safer and better over time.
Okay, let's dive a bit deeper into the safety and ethical features Grace proposes. You mentioned some already, but let's flesh them out.
Right, so informed consent and transparency are vital right from the start. The user needs to clearly understand what Grace is, what it isn't, how data is handled locally securely, and that features like trusted contacts are purely voluntary.
And the local memory needs to be secure.
Definitely. Stable local memory and security, using strong encryption, protects both privacy and the integrity of the user's history. We've touched on the embedded core values framework, acting as that ethical guide.
What about thoughtful interaction design? There's a mention of something called the contemplator framework.
Yeah, that's about shaping the conversation itself. The idea isn't just for the AI to give quick answers or simple validation. It's about encouraging deeper reflection. The contemplator framework likely provides guidelines for the AI to ask more probing, open-ended questions, maybe reflecting patterns back to the user in a way that sparks insight.
So less fixing, more facilitating self-discovery.
Kind of, yeah. More about fostering the user's own process.
And the graceful shutdown or transition protocols, that seems incredibly important given the potential attachments people might form.
It really is thoughtful. Recognizing that bond, Grace envisions optional ways to end the relationship if needed. Maybe farewell rituals or modules that help summarize the journey, acknowledge the connection appropriately, and crucially, point towards human support or other resources.
Managing the ending, not just letting it break.
Exactly. And the trusted contact triggers, we covered it, but the emphasis is always on opt-in, user control over triggers, contacts, and what info, if any, gets shared, plus safeguards against misuse.
Makes sense. The paper also brought up mitigating harmful reinforcement and using explicit confirmations.
Crucial safety nets. Mitigating harmful reinforcement means designing the AI so it doesn't accidentally encourage or validate negative loops or unhelpful thinking.
Right.
Like not just agreeing with catastrophic thoughts.
Right.
And explicit confirmation protocols add that extra step for sensitive things, like, are you sure you want to delete this part of your history? Or maybe confirming understanding before acting on a sensitive disclosure, always checking against its ethical framework.
So Grace isn't just a wish list. The paper actually sketches out a possible architecture.
Yeah, high-level blueprint. It suggests using a local LM core, that's a large language model, probably an open source one like Mistral or Llama, maybe Quantize, to run efficiently on local hardware.
Okay, the brain of the operation.
Right. Then a persistent encrypted memory store, basically a secure local database for all the interactions.
Yeah.
An interesting idea is plug-in style therapeutic modules. Meaning different therapeutic approaches or tools could be developed as add-ons, ideally vetted by the community for safety and effectiveness before people use them.
Allowing for specialization and expert input.
Precisely. Then there's the trigger and notification engine for that trusted contact feature. A minimalist UI UX focused on usability, offline first design.
Offline first, important for local hosting.
Definitely. And local adaptation refinement, the idea that the AI could personalize itself based on your interactions over time, but privately on your device without sending data out. They mentioned something called recursive intelligence evolution, RIE, as a possible technique there.
Learning without compromising privacy.
That's the goal. And finally, a secure update mechanism, so users can safely get improvements or security patches as downloadable packages.
This really paints a compelling picture, doesn't it? A potential future where AI emotional support prioritizes the user's well-being, their control, their privacy.
It really does. It presents a stark contrast to some current models and prompts, I think. Some really important considerations for how we develop and deploy these technologies moving forward.
Absolutely. And speaking of considerations, we genuinely want to hear from you, our listeners. What are your gut reactions to all this? The potential upsides, the downsides of AI therapy companions? Does this mirror break risk resonate? Maybe you've had experiences yourself.
Yeah, we'd be fascinated to hear.
We're especially interested in your thoughts on how important user control and data privacy are when we're talking about something this personal. Please share your comments, your experiences, your insights. Really help shape our understanding.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, the key takeaways feel pretty clear. AI therapy companions. Huge potential benefits, especially for access. No doubt about it. But that risk of sudden disruption, the mirror break, is serious. It's not theoretical, and it needs real attention. Solutions like this proposed grace model, open source, local, user-controlled, point towards a different path.
A path focused on user well-being, data sovereignty, reliability, all built on an ethical foundation.
Exactly. Empowering the user, basically.
It really drives home the need to weigh things carefully, doesn't it? The exciting possibilities versus the potential vulnerabilities, especially when AI touches our emotional lives so directly.
Which leaves us with a final thought, maybe something to chew on. As AI gets woven deeper and deeper into our lives, how do we make sure these powerful tools actually empower us? How do we prevent them from creating new vulnerabilities, especially into something as core as our emotional well-being?
A crucial question for the future of human-AI relationships. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive today. We hope it's given you some valuable food for thought on this complex and fast-moving topic.
Thanks for listening.